Hello, educators, and welcome to this explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're joining me today because, well, we're unpacking something that literally has the power to completely transform everyday language teaching. We're going to be talking about Joan Netton's incredible pedagogical philosophy, specifically focusing on her literacy-based approach to teaching foreign languages. If you're a teacher who sometimes feels like you're pulling teeth just to get your students to actually use the language they're learning, if you've ever faced that terrifying room full of blank stares after a long vocabulary lesson, you are in the exact right place. We're going to break down this research step by step, and together we'll build a practical, actionable guide to a real paradigm shift that you can take right back to your classroom tomorrow morning.
Okay, let's dive into this bold provocation. Language is not just a form, or as the source material puts it, la langue n'est pas qu'une forme. It sounds incredibly simple, right? But think about how foreign languages have traditionally been taught for decades. We so often treat language like it's a specimen to be dissected in a lab. It just becomes this rigid set of grammatical forms, conjugation tables, and endless vocabulary lists to be memorized and then blindly regurgitated on a Friday quiz. Well, this concept immediately dismantles that common misconception. Because when we view language purely as a structural form, we completely strip it of its life. We end up teaching students how to label all the parts of a car rather than teaching them how to actually drive it out of the garage. Netton's approach demands that we stop looking at language as just a simple grammatical equation to be solved.
Section 1. Beyond Grammatical Rules. Rethinking the Nature of Language.
Before we go any further, I just want to take a quick moment right here to validate all the incredibly hard work you do as teachers. Seriously, planning lessons, grading papers, trying to keep 30 teenagers engaged, it is a monumental task. But I want to invite you to view those meticulously crafted lesson plans through an entirely new literacy-based lens. What if we step outside the traditional rulebook for a second? Joan Netton states that in a literacy-based conception of foreign language teaching, we absolutely must consider language comme moyen de penser, comme moyen de transmettre un message, as a means of thinking and as a means of transmitting a message. Notice the dynamic cognitive energy in those words. Language isn't passive. It's a vehicle for thought. It's the active transmission of a real message from one human being to another. When you contrast the rigidness of traditional grammar drills with the vibrant, sometimes messy, beautiful process of actually conveying a message, you really start to see the shift. Think about it practically. If a student perfectly conjugates a really difficult verb on a written worksheet, but then they can't use that same verb to order a coffee or ask for directions or just tell you how they're feeling, have they truly learned the language? According to this philosophy, the answer is a resounding no. Language is, first and foremost, about the message.
Section 2. The power of the spoken message and rebalancing classroom time.
I want to shift our focus to the practical reality of your classroom right now. Reflect for a moment and be very honest with yourself. In your current foreign language program, how much time do you actually dedicate to written exercises, reading, writing, filling in the blanks, versus unscripted, spontaneous oral communication? If you're like most traditional programs, the written aspect heavily dominates. But Netton's philosophy challenges this head-on, and this brilliantly illustrates exactly what needs to change. Netton explicitly points out that oral development must take up roughly 75% of our focus. Yeah, 75%, leaving only 25% for the written forms and the rest of the program. If our real goal is literacy and the true ability to transmit a message, the spoken word absolutely has to be the overwhelming priority. The oral component literally cannot just be an afterthought or a quick 5-minute conversational warm-up at the beginning of class before you open the textbook. It needs to be the dominant mode of instruction, practice, and assessment. Teachers orienting themselves toward this literacy-based approach must concentrate primarily on the spoken message, dedicating the vast majority of their class time to simply getting students talking.
Section 3. Engaging the cognitive process and the role of tasks.
Okay, so we've talked about the philosophy of communication and the vital need to prioritize oral language. But how do we actually do that in a room full of absolute beginners? This is where we shift to the practical mechanics of classroom tasks. Because it's one thing to say, hey, let's speak more, and it's another entirely to design activities that actually force students to think in the target language. So the crucial point is how you design and implement your classroom activities. The source material outlines 3 sequential, actionable steps to ensure your students are truly communicating rather than just blindly repeating phrases back to you. Step 1, focus on the message. Before you even write the lesson plan, ask yourself, what exact message are my students going to transmit today?
Not what verb tense are they learning, but what are they actually communicating to each other. Step 2, reflect on the type of task given to the learners. Is the task you're assigning just camouflage for a grammar drill? You know, a wolf in sheep's clothing? Or does it genuinely require them to interact to solve a problem, bridge an information gap, or share a real opinion? And step 3, which is probably the most important for you as the facilitator, check their ongoing cognitive engagement. While the task is unfolding in real time, are they actively engaged in the cognitive process? Are their brains working hard to find the right words to express their authentic thoughts? Or are they just reading off a script you provided? True language learning only happens when that cognitive process is actively engaged in the moment. Section 4, the great paradigm shift, a new way of teaching.
We are guiding everything toward the ultimate culmination of Netton's philosophy here. If you take all these pieces we've discussed, moving away from treating language merely as a rigid form, prioritizing oral communication for an incredible 75% of the class, and relentlessly focusing on authentic cognitive task engagement, it sets up a paradigm shift that fundamentally redefines what a successful language classroom looks like. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the stark contrast. On one side, we have the traditional before model. It starts entirely from the written word. It is centered strictly on language forms. It's safe, it's predictable, it's very easy to grade. But as we discussed, it is completely disconnected from real, spontaneous human communication. But on the other side, the after, we see the core goal of the literacy-based approach. The movement is strongly towards the oral. The focus shifts dramatically away from the structural forms themselves and lands squarely on the authentic use of the language. It's a total displacement of focus. You are no longer just a teacher of grammar rules or the classroom grammar police. You actually become a facilitator of true language use. You create the environment where students use the language as a vital tool to think, to collaborate, and to transmit their ideas. And honestly, that is a profound professional shift for any educator.
And that leaves us with this crucial final question to close on today. I want you to look at your lesson plan for tomorrow morning. Really look at the activities you have lined up. Ask yourself honestly, are your students just learning forms, or are they truly transmitting a message? If it's the former, don't panic. You now have the framework to start making that shift. Try tweaking just one single activity tomorrow to focus more on the oral message and real cognitive engagement. Just see what happens when you treat language not as a flat form on a page, but as the living, breathing means of human thought it is meant to be. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and happy teaching.